Good morning. Archbishop Richard Gagnon here, speaking to you from the Catholic Center in downtown Winnipeg. This is our Friday report. Do you realize that this is our 9th report? We've had a novena of Friday reports, and a lot of water has passed under the bridge since we've started these reports to the Archdiocese of Winnipeg. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, and the purpose of these reports on Friday morning simply to update you on what's happening in the Archdiocese of Winnipeg. And today our main theme will simply be the revised protocols for the Archdiocese of Winnipeg in light of the current COVID-19 crises. I mentioned last week that we will work on our protocols to bring them up to date, and we have done so. The big change, of course, has just occurred yesterday when the provincial government announced that gatherings of people can now be at the level of 25 people as opposed to 10. When I originally worked on the protocols, 10 was the assumed number, but now we're 25. So thanks be to God, that's a great improvement, and we're going in the right direction. Maybe in a month or so, it'll be expanded to even more people allowed to gather in any one place for an event. And we're speaking specifically here of liturgical life of the Church itself. The protocols are a number of pages. They're quite detailed, and they will be online, but certainly by now the parishes would have received them, and they are to be put into effect immediately. However, the proviso there is that when the parishes are ready to do so, because they assume that certain aspects of the protocols, the question of sanitization, the question of social distancing, these things need to be in place first before our parishes open up. And that brings me to a central aspect of the protocols, and that is we want to move now from private celebration of our faith, private masses, even though they're live streamed in many cases, to the public celebration of our faith. And that's the underlying theme here. In the protocols, I made reference to the catacombs. The Christians at one time, they worshiped privately and secretly in the catacombs, but they came out one day into the light of day, and their faith became a public matter. Well, we are in the process now of opening up our communities to public worship, and in a certain sense, we are rebuilding our communities once again because of the great issue of the health crises in Canada, which has affected all of us in many ways. So moving from private celebration of the liturgy to the public celebration of our liturgies, this applies to weekday masses. It also applies to Sunday masses. And I do mention in the protocols that if we are elderly, if we have underlying medical conditions, if we are frail, I strongly encourage you to remain at home rather than to go to a Mass during the week or on Sundays. Once again, the numbers of people that are allowed or permitted to attend at any one service is limited to 25, and there are suggestions in the protocols as to how that might be done. But when the parishes are ready, they are given permission immediately to begin to celebrate publicly the Holy Eucharist and to celebrate the faith openly and publicly. I have allowed also during the week only, not on Sundays, but during the week, for the distribution of Holy Communion where necessary. It's been well over 2 months now, and our people have not been able to receive the Eucharist. These are extraordinary times, and so at this particular time, permission will be given outside of Mass in certain cases to receive the Holy Eucharist, always within the context of the Word of God and of prayer. The protocols mention a lot about sanitization and social distancing and what are the requirements to be undertaken by individual parish communities. That will require a good deal of work. It'll require the help of volunteers and so on. And I'm encouraging our pastors in consultation with their parish councils to discuss these matters. Also, our parish offices, I'm asking to be open on June the 1st. The Catholic Center here will be open on June the 1st. Hours of operation will be reduced, of course, but our parish offices are to be open on June the 1st. Live streaming will continue in many cases in parish communities if the pastors feel that there's still a fruitful mission in live streaming. They certainly can continue. Live streaming at the Cathedral in Winnipeg will also continue on Sundays. We are also encouraging our churches to continue to be open during the day as much as possible, and that people are aware of the hours where church can be open to come in for individual prayer. I also mentioned in the protocols that certainly exposition of the Blessed Sacrament would be a fine idea, as well as benediction to accompany that. The protocols, as I say, will be online for reference, and all are invited to read them so that we understand exactly what the requirements are of our parish communities in moving from the private celebration of the liturgy to a public celebration of the liturgy. I continue to be very, very grateful to our parish communities for the efforts they've made to play an important part in reducing the spread of this virus. Heroic efforts have been made, as well as our society in general, in order to reduce the effects of this virus. So I am deeply grateful, and I thank you all for the efforts that you are making. And on the question of staying at home, just a reminder that the dispensation from attending Mass on Sundays will remain in effect until Sunday, September the 6th. So just to let you know that, some may have some questions about that. We have had a number of questions that have come through this week, and 3 to be exact. Sometimes the questions are repetitions, so we've chosen the 3 general categories. The first one, when will our churches be open again? We are so eager to worship with our parish community. Well, it's very true. I mean, I've had many letters, people have spoken to me, the great desire in our hearts to once again come together to worship. And the protocols describe how that can happen under certain limitations. We are still under the limitation of the numbers of people allowed to celebrate together with social distancing in place. And so we've started now with 25. That's a good place to start. And so I would invite you to look at your parish bulletins or the websites in your community to find out what time liturgies will be happening in your parish communities. Another question is how will we ensure that our churches are properly sanitized as we open them up? I'm thinking particularly about the elderly who faithfully attend Mass and other church events. Well, the protocols deal with the whole question of sanitization in the churches. That's described in detail. I won't go into that at the present time, but it's all there for reference. And these are prerequisites to an opening up to public liturgy. And you also mentioned in this question about the elderly. Again, I am encouraging the frail, those with pre-existing medical conditions, the elderly to think carefully about this. At this point, for the time being, I'm encouraging you to remain at home until we pass this second stage of the virus. In other words, the limitation to gatherings and so on, there is still a possible danger, so please be aware of that. So I'm encouraging you to consider carefully staying at home rather than come to public celebrations of the liturgy. And the third one, can we discontinue the reception of communion on our tongue going forward? And this person sort of feels that it is a practice which, as he or she describes as unsanitary practice. Well, actually, receiving on the hand and on the tongue are both very acceptable ways of receiving Holy Communion. However, during this time of the COVID-19 crisis, we have asked that the reception of Holy Communion be on the hand, simply to avoid any possibilities of further spread of the virus. And of course, we receive Holy Communion with the host only, not with the cup. Until further notice, that will be the general liturgical guidelines put into effect. So thank you very much for these questions. I do appreciate them. And last Sunday, after the Mass, I met with the team that provides the live streaming from the cathedral faithfully for well over 2 months. And I asked them about their experience and how they felt about it. And since we have such a wide viewing congregation who tune into the live streaming, I thought it might be of interest to you to meet the young adults who are responsible for the live streaming at the cathedral. So this is what they had to say. Well, many people have asked me about those who are involved in the live streaming process. And so today I just want to introduce to you our volunteers. We have a wonderful group of volunteers at the cathedral who look after the audio and the visual, and they're very faithful. They've been here every Sunday for over 2 months, and they're doing a great job. I kind of call them the A-team, and I'll introduce them to you today. First of all, we have with us Christian Martinez, who is the coordinator for our Office of Communications in the Archdiocese. Welcome, welcome, Christian.
Thanks, Your Grace.
So what do you do here today to make this thing happen?
Thanks for the question, Your Grace. So certainly when the province announced the restrictions, it was a great time of change and adaptation for us in the office. And part of our goal was truly to make the live stream available to as many people in our archdiocese as possible, keeping in mind that not everyone has the same setup at home, right? They don't use the same devices, internet connection, things like that. So part of what we try to figure out in the Office of Communication Services is how can we make sure that the live stream reaches as many people as possible, and of course the quality of that. Mm-hmm. So it's the website work, it's the social media work, Facebook and YouTube. That's part of what we do.
That's great, and you're doing a great job of this too, I must say. It's been very successful that way. And so Christian, like, you know, these are special times, and God's grace is always present to us, and even during these times of difficulty and challenge, you know. So being involved in this live streaming process of communications, you know, what do you perceive as God's grace in your life by doing this? What does it mean to you? How do you see God's grace in action here in this experience?
There were two things that I observed, Your Grace, and both were awe-inspiring for me. Number one, is people have been so patient with our live streaming. This is our wonderful team that you see here, and that little fixture that you see is actually our camera. This is not the same sort of equipment that we see with the live broadcast, you know. So we're still looking for ways to improve. But people have been so supportive. They have been so generous with their affirmations. And it's humbling to see that, the patience, the generosity, the love that people have, the sense of community. And the other, Your Grace, is their fervor, the fervor in their faith, receiving the feedback from people. And it's just been so beautiful to witness during this time.
Thank you, Christian. God is always present.
Yes.
The faith is very much alive. So I'll go now to another member of this team, and that is to our cantor, our singer, Benedict Lemaitre. Come forward, Benedict. Benedict is a very talented singer and musician, as well as dancer, and she has been a very integral part of this live streaming process. And you've used your talents for this every week. I'm very grateful for that, Benedict. And so can you say something about what this has meant to you and how you perceive the grace of God in this whole kind of new ministry of live streaming?
Absolutely. Thank you, Your Grace.
You're welcome.
So this experience has definitely been very new for all of us. We've been learning how to adjust each and every week to the new things around us. And this whole experience has filled me with a great sense of longing for the living church. So our brothers and sisters who come every single Sunday and sit in the pews. Normally when I come out to sing, I see hundreds of smiling, singing faces. And now, since this began, we come out and there are 10 of us gathered here, all distanced from each other. And yeah, I really yearn to see the faces of those in our community. And also it's filled me with an appreciation for the Eucharist. So being able to be here every single Sunday when I know others cannot has filled me with a deep sense of appreciation, and it's helped me realize how lucky we are to be able to receive the Blessed Sacrament. So moving forward from this experience, I know I will never take for granted the opportunity to come to Mass, to worship with our brothers and sisters, and to receive the Blessed Sacrament.
Thank you, Benedict.
Yeah.
It's a great answer. And you just informed me before we started doing this morning that actually you grew up in this cathedral parish, didn't you?
Yes, I
And
did.
you told me about how your mother would take you to the front pew here
Yeah.
since you were a little young child, and you actually grew up in the cathedral community. And here you are still in the area of ministry, but a new
Yes.
kind of ministry. So
Yeah.
that's a beautiful story. Thank you.
Thank you, Your
Benedict,
Grace.
very much for sharing. I will also now call Ashley to come forward. And Ashley, do you want to share with us, what you are doing here in terms of this live stream broadcast? A little bit about what God's grace has meant to you. What grace do you perceive has been present to you during this experience?
Thank you, Grace. Well, for those who don't know, I actually help with the camera and all the angles that take place during the Mass. A blessing for me is, being able to serve. Because I just moved back from Toronto last summer, away from the parish community, away from my home parish, and I wasn't serving while I was out in Toronto. And one of the things that I was looking forward to was actually finding another avenue for me to serve when I get back. So it might not be in the normal Mass setting, but this is definitely a blessing in disguise, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Thank you very much for that. And Ashley, obviously, even though there's social distancing and everything, and this is a live streaming kind of ministry, it won't always be. And this kind of is a preparation for the return, right? And as I mentioned today in the homily, that we kind of have to rebuild a little bit in our community. So you yourself and members of this team are part of that, part of kind of bridging the gap, until the time comes in which we have a greater response coming to the churches once again, which will happen,
yes.
Hopefully in not too distant future. So thank you very much, Ashley, for what you're doing here, and people much appreciate this.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. And thank you. I also called Janelle to come forward. I don't know what Janelle is doing exactly. She's sitting behind a computer. She can tell us what she's doing. And go ahead, Janelle. What part do you play? And then, like the others have done too, what is the grace in this that you perceive? Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Grace. So what I do here is I am the social media account manager for the Archdiocese of Winnipeg. So I'm behind the Facebook page and the Instagram page and the Twitter and now the YouTube, because we are broadcasting live on YouTube. And it's my job to just make sure everything's running smoothly, everything looks good. When we were doing as well Facebook live streams, there's kind of comments that come through, so just kind of moderating that and speaking on behalf of the Archdiocese in a very unique way. So that's been my role here, and I get to join the A team and be part of it, and that's such a blessing in itself. As for the graces, like Benedict said, the opportunity to come and be here is in itself amazing, but just to see people long for the Mass, they're tuning into our live streams every single weekend, and it's not the same, but it's a beautiful way to just come together in this really unique way, which was kind of always the purpose of social media, to keep to make us closer even though we're all in a physical distance, and so the way that it's come together in this pandemic and in this unprecedented time has just been really interesting and really neat. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and like your confreres here, it is a method of evangelization, and with social distancing, the use of social media is it's an opposite thing.
Yeah.
It's a way of bridging the distancing
Absolutely.
in such a way that enables people to once again reconnect.
Absolutely.
And so you are fairly new to the Archdiocese in this Ministry of Communications, so we're very grateful for your service, Janelle. Thank you for coming here on Sundays as well.
My pleasure.
Much
Thank you.
appreciated. Thank you. And now, last but not least, is Maui. Maui, he's kind of a technical guy, and we really rely on him an awful lot. So first of all, Maui, do you want to share with us what you do exactly behind all these gizmos you've got here, and also what is the grace that you yourself have kind of discerned in this experience?
Well, thank you, Your Grace. So my main job is actually to manage the sound and the lights so that we can sync it with the streaming. So I'm making sure that we sound well outside, because there's a difference between the sound in the cathedral and the sound that goes into the streaming on the internet. So yeah, so that in itself is, I guess, the grace that I find in it is that it allows me to share my talent that God has given me. And to give a little bit of a background, what happened is that I was praying beforehand and saying, Lord, with this pandemic that's going on, I don't know what to do, and how can I share my talent, because there's no recording, there's no things that I do regularly. So when Christian called me, that was an answered prayer right away, that God, a message from God saying that I need you at the cathedral, and share your talent, and this is what you prayed for, and that's a grace in itself. Yes, Your Grace.
Thank you for that. And I hope we heard what Maui said there, because he prayed to the Lord to show him a way of offering his talents, for the church. And so during this time of the pandemic, volunteerism with the talents that people have is very important in rebuilding our community. So thank you very much for what you do and the way that you have come to our assistance to enable these live streaming broadcasts, Maui, to go forth.
Welcome, Your Grace.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Great. So there we have our team here at the Cathedral, and as you can see, what this team is doing, these are people of faith. All these people are people of faith, and they're using their faith within the context of modern technology as a form of evangelization. And every parish has its own experience of their volunteers and what they do to help in the parish. When we start opening up and coming back, there's even more of a need for volunteerism and prayer, and certainly for courage and patience, that we can really enable our communities once again to be vibrant ones, joyful ones. We're joyful now, but we want to come together as the people of God. So thank you very much for joining us today. May God be with you. Well, I hope you found that a little bit informative rather. And thank you once again for joining us on this Friday report. And I look forward to meeting with you once again a week from now. May the Lord be with you, and may God protect you and keep you and help us to make this transition of public worship in our Archdiocese, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.